thing is recording. Okay. Um, the presentation is about a paper called a symbolic analysis of privacy for TLS 1.3 with encrypted client hello. And your presenter is Bharati Selvan Rajendran. And so, introduction about the paper, right? This paper is proposed to analyze the current newer version TLS 1.3 and its extension encrypted client hello protocols to as well as to provide a model to conduct future analysis and to discuss the results of the conduct analysis. Next slide. How did version 1.3 of TLS and encrypted clients come to be? Before that, let us expand more about what TLS even is. TLS expansion of TLS is transport layer security, which is a protocol used to encrypt data between a client and a server. That's what TLS is. And why do we need TLS 1.3? Before TLS 1.3, the handshake data were exchanged in plain text, which are used by the adversaries to cause havoc throughout the systems, which is not good. That's why in TLS 1.3, they have introduced encrypting data between the handshakes as well, so that passive attacks and active attacks and man in the middle attacks, all of them would not be able to be accomplished. And within this we also have something called a zero return time handshake, which is just let us assume that there's a client and which has had previous connections with this particular server and it still has the keys. It could use the older keys to encrypt the data, which saves more time and which do not need a full-on three-way handshake, right? So it saves a lot of time. That's why zero runtime is also included in TLS 1.3. Then Visa TLS 1.3, why do we need ECH, which is encrypted client hello? You see, most of the packets are encrypted in TLS 1.3 except something called a client hello, which is encrypted and encrypted because it is needed by the front facing servers or the client servers to receive server something called the server name identification, so that it's kind of like the identity of the backend servers. So without that, the front facing server would not able to route the particular client to the server. Adversaries could use this server name identification to get which servers the clients are using. They could also leverage this to all sorts of attacks and by a privacy threat, all sorts of things. To prevent that, they've introduced ECH. We'll see what ECH does in the couple of upcoming slides because it's a much bigger concept to discuss in a single slide. Okay, how do we this paper is all about analyzing TLS and ECH, right? How do we do that? There's a three set of goals this protocol should achieve. These are like standards set by the particular people who authors of this paper. Those are security preservation, stronger guarantees, and downgrade resilience. What does security preservation even mean? This verifies that the extension does not affect authentication, integrity, and confidentiality of the data passed through the TLS connection. What does stronger guarantee even mean? It is to prove that the previous version of TLS does not satisfy the current generation goals, or it's to say that we need TLS 1.3 and ECH to create more resilient systems. What is downgrade resistance? It's a rule. It's what it meant to say is that TLS 1.2 and 1.2, the previous versions of 1.3 does not encrypt data, right? What if the attacker could force your client to use TLS 1.2, but your client has made connections with 1.3 prior to that? That should be prevented. That is what downgrade resistance is. Let us move on to the next slide. What are the goals of TLS protocol? These are more of the technical goals of TLS protocol rather than the ones we have previously seen were more susceptible to common knowledge. This is more technical. Okay, these are categorized into three parts. The first one is authentication and integrity goals. Within that, we are having SAuth as first. SAuth means server authentication, where a client receives an encrypted message from a server, and there are two possibilities, right? Either the server is authentic and it hasn't been compromised, or either the system is compromised. Next one is client authentication. This is where the client sends the data to the server. There's two possibilities: either the client is genuine or the client is um, compromised. Next one is key and transcript agreement. If a client compromises a handshake with an honest peer, then they should agree on the connection keys and handshake transcript. Next one is data stream integrity. If a client receives a stream of messages, then it must be from an honest peer, or that peer must be compromised. The next one is key uniqueness. The same key should not be used for two different connection needs. To say that a new fresh pair of keys should be created for each new connections. And downgrade resilience. We saw what downgrade resilience in the previous slides, but I could a short of form for that. If a client and server agree upon a certain protocol parameters, then the handshake cannot end with a less preferred parameter. The next one is next set of goals are confidentiality goals. The first one is key secrecy. If the client or the server ends the handshake with the encryption keys, then the peer is honest and the adversaries do not know the keys, or the peer is compromised. Key indistinguishability. This is an important one. If a client completes a handshake with an honest peer to obtain a key, then this key is indistinguishable from the fresh random value generated at the end of the handshake. And the next one is one round return time. One round return time is kind of like the opposite of zero time return time. It's the data that you send after the handshake, after you got your public AES keys and you encrypt and send application data. That is what we call is one return time data. The next one is zero return time data secrecy. It is what does it say is that the client sends a zero return time data over TLS 1.3, then the pre-shared keys that the keys that you gotten from the previous connection must be kept separate, otherwise the system is compromised. The next set of goals comes under privacy. The first one is client identity privacy. If a client starts a connection through TLS 1.3 to a server, the adversary should not be able to find which client made the connection to the particular server. Key indistinguishable. Next one is client unlinkability. If one of the two clients make a new connection to the server, the attacker should not be able to distinguish the client that made the new connection. The next one is server identity privacy. When an honest client-facing server has long-term keys from different servers and the client wants to make a connection through that particular CDN or ISP servers to the backend servers, then the attacker should not be able to find which server the client is making the connection to. The next goal is client server extension privacy. If a client or a server sends sensitive information through TLS extensions, the attacker should not be able to distinguish this information from the other payload. For example, let us assume that you're sending passwords through your TLS connection or any sensitive data. With that, you would also have other regular application data. The adversary should not be able to distinguish between the regular application messages or data and your sensitive data. Both of them should be about same, and there should not be distinction among them. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, existing prior analysis and models that are kind of the authors have gone through in this research paper prior to the creation of their own models. First one is based on pen and proof cryptographic proofs. These kind of analysis uses generally use paper and pen, and they manually write down the conditions, try to satisfy those conditions, and there have been several good outcomes out of this. Those are this paper they were able to conclude the conclude that certificate based DHE handshakes and personal key pre-shared key DHE handshakes and pre-shared key only handshakes were good. They kind of achieved the authentication side of goals, but it does not necessarily cover the handshake related encryptions or the negotiation or what ECH provides. And even if we want to yeah, want to prove ECH or the newer set of goals through pen and proof cryptographic proofs, that would take hundreds of paper of conditions, and even if we process that, analyzing them and checking for remarks would be it's not possible in real world. Then suppose we could use something other than that, which is called machine check tools. Something like cryptoverif, which is a tool used to check the conditions of protocols. But the problem with machine check tools is that a manual supervision is needed for those, and which necessarily defeats the purpose of including a machine. So that's why we use automated tools such as proverifs. In the previous version, or the first version of the proverif automated tool, did not include the things like ECH or hello request reply, but in this paper we have included those. They have included those, and we'll see them in the upcoming slides. Okay, in this proposed model, um, we have taken the previously existing ProRef model and configuring it so it supports post handshake authentication, TCM based resumption, so that the hello request reply attacks would not we can analyze those, and support for server name identification and the EC hash were also added. All these analyses are conducted by automated tools, so analysts who want to use them have full control over the configuration model as well. The model also supports key indistinguishability, and other TLS 1.3 problems such as the SNI can also be analyzed to make sure the model is feasible to perform the real world. It does not analyze downgrade attacks on older versions of TLS such as TLS 1.2 and 1.1, because if we add those as well, it would take more computation time, but you don't need to analyze them because this model is all about TLS version 1.3 and encrypted client hellos. Now let us see how encrypted client hello event came to be. The first stage was forward binding, which started with the simple idea of encrypting the entire client hello using pre-shared keys between the client and the front facing servers. The problem with this is that the it is more susceptible to man in the middle attack, where the attacker could interfere um, between the connections and cause problems, especially in particular condition where, let us assume, the backend server, the front facing server, sends an hello request reply to the client. What the adversary could do is that they could take over the flow during the hello request reply and change the key, because a lot of times pre-shared keys are using Diffie-Hellman key exchange. They could change the variable from the genuine clients to theirs, which would end up in swapping of a proper key between the adversary and the server. Using this, the attacker could do all sorts of things, which is not good. So later on, a more complete approach to this were taken. Um, but after that, they wanted to encrypt more hello client, which was not enough, and then they came to backward binding, where um, everything is encrypted and to stop attacks, because if the server sends a hello request to the attacker, the attacker could hijack it as well, right? What they've done is consistent usage of same encryption keys. That's what they did. For example, there's multiple exchange of packets in a single handshake, right? Because we do not want the adversaries to take over after the first client hello during the hello request reply. What we can do, we have to make sure that the the keys used in the first client where should also be used in subsequent packets. This makes sure that the same client is in connection with the server. And also, another thing that added was that we added a nuance or nouns. I don't know how to pronounce that particular word. It's spelled NOUNC, which is a empty data or data with no meaning, is also added with the packet, so that when the front end servers decrypt them, they can authenticate between the packets by using that number, because only the client would know the number, the adversary would not. This is how backward binding works. This is more of the technical part of this complete thing would not be able to be implemented in real world. Because of that, there's another implementation of ECH, which is technically more similar to the ones we've seen before. We have just split the packets into two parts called the client hello outer and client hello inner. The client hello outer contains the stuff required for the client facing servers, and client hello inner contains SNIs and more sensitive information needed by the backend servers. And if the client facing server accept those ECH, it is called accepting ECH. After that, the client facing server will decrypt the data and send it to the backend server, and the connection is fulfilled. But if the if the client facing server rejects the ECH, which is called a rejecting ECH, where usually it would ask for a hello request reply to send another client hello, because we made sure the consistency of client hellos is always from the genuine client. We don't have to worry about that. And another set of rule that was implemented for this particular moving part is that when you receive the second client hello, we should only use a pair of client hello inners or client hello outers. We should not use the older client hello inner and new client hello outer, or the new older client hello outer client hello inners. It should always be the same set. That those are the stages of encrypted client hello. And let us move to the next slide. Results. They've conducted this analysis in two phases, with ECH and without ECH, so that we can separate the goals and accomplish this goals with less computation time. Because if we combine those two, it would take more time and probably skew a little bit of data. That's why they have separated it. Let us see what without ECH first. With ECH first, sorry. Running the new ProVerif with ECH is more expensive, which is why we have removed that. Server authentication key and transcript agreement properties proved with the post handshake authentication from the client. The client authentication is proved with client certificates and pre-shared keys, but not at the same time, because in real world cases the client would use either a certificate or a pre-shared key to authenticate, not both at the same time, so that is fine. ECH downgrade resilience is achieved with certificate based client authentications, and key indistinguishability is also proved under 48 hours, around 21 hours. Server identity privacy proved for handshakes with ECH, and hello request reply, hence proving that ECH is not vulnerable to hello request reply attacks. Client authentication privacy and unlinkability are proven with clients that you use both pre-shared keys and certificates, client certificates. Now, what did we see in without ECH? This analysis was completed in 10 hours, which means this is much faster, as we said before, with because ECH is not included in this part. We have only taken the goals of TLS 1.3 and went with it. That's why this is done under 10 hours. And this validates the change to the previous model of TLS in ProVerif. This proves that TLS 1.3 satisfy the authentication guarantees. The analysis of equivalence properties takes more time, such as indistinguishability, key indistinguishability, service policy. Those are included with the ECH results. Now, if we combine both, it kind of concludes the towards the satisfied results. Let us see what the conclusion is. With the results that arrived, the conclusion is that it gives more confidence in protocol design of ECH, and this analysis has already influenced the design of the protocol, but it should not noted that all these findings and from this research exist within this model, and there's a lot of gap between a model ran in a laboratory to the real world model. That's what the research conclusion is, and I try to learn more about the implementation of TLS because TLS 1.3 has been for a long time. What were the consequences that we faced, or the consequences that the uh, people, experts who use this on systems think is that legendary legacy, not legendary, legacy middleware boxes such as the older generation firewalls, intrusion prevention systems, and detection systems would not work with on TLS 1.3. So, companies or systems that use older versions would have to upgrade to version newer models that are compatible with version 1.3. And it is also stated that with the TLS 1.3, most of the handshakes or most of the payload of TLS is encrypted, which means we're kinda nearing complete encryption of data, right? This also removes inspection of data TLS payload, which could possibly reduce the effectiveness of intrusion prevention systems. And another bad or like problem with implementing on TLS 1.3 is probably piracy and websites the government usually block. These are blocked using the SNIs. There's ISP usually match the SNIs and block the packets. Now that is also encrypted, uh, people could have access to pirated websites and general bad actors in the internet. They have more access to that now. And another gap that ECH has failed to fulfill, maybe because this is not really a part that TLS has to protect. This is more in the IP, which is that ECH and TLS 1.3 only protect servers that use domain names or share IPs with multiple servers. If a server has its own public IP, which should be visible in the IP header as well, because of the TLS is not protecting those. To protect that, I don't know how to protect that. TLS and ECH does not protect that. That's a gap that should be fulfilled in the future. And with that, my presentation is coming to an end. Thank you.